On a cold night in Medellin, Popeye was laying in bed with his lover when he got a phone call from Pablo Escobar himself. Escobar then asked him, "Plata o plomo?" which translates to money or lead. Popeye knew exactly what this meant, so he made his choice. A choice that had him choose between his lover and his loyalty to Pablo Escobar. So what choice did he make? Why was Pablo Escobar the one to make the phone call himself? And who the heck is Popeye? I'll answer these questions in a few minutes, but make sure you stick to the end, where I reveal the craziness Popeye got involved in after living a life of crime. Trust me when I say you don't want to miss this one, so sit back, relax, and let's begin. Popeye, whose real name is John Jairo Velasquez, was once the #1 hitman for the wealthiest drug lord to ever walk the earth, Pablo Escobar. He worked hand in hand with Escobar in the Medellin cartel, where he committed some of the most despicable crimes against humanity. But before attaining this position, Velasquez was a normal guy just like you and me. Born on April 15, 1962, Velasquez grew up in the small town of Yarumal, just a few miles away from Medellin, the home of Pablo Escobar. But the craziest part of Velasquez's childhood is that he actually had no links to drugs or cartel business. But he did have a very scary obsession with guns. At the age of 12, his family moved to Medellin, where Velasquez joined the Colombian National Army. But being in the army didn't quench his burning desire for violence, so after a few months he quit and joined the Colombian National Navy. It was in the Navy that Velasquez got the nickname Popeye, due to his resemblance to the fictional cartoon character. And even though he ended up undergoing surgery to alter his resemblance to the character, some nicknames just never go away, and neither did Popeye's obsession with violence. Popeye eventually left the Navy around the age of 16, becoming a street hustler in Medellin. And you don't need me to tell you that a young kid like Popeye, who had all that adrenaline for violence, wouldn't eventually cross paths with cartel members in a town like Medellin. But in Popeye's case, he didn't just cross paths with cartel members. He crossed a path with the cartel kingpin himself, Pablo Escobar. Popeye met Escobar at the age of 17, when Pablo recruited him and gave him his first assignment. Escobar assigned Popeye to kill a bus driver, who ran over and killed the mother of one of Pablo's other gunmen. In a normal world, with a normal person, Popeye should have had some time of resentment, right? I mean, there's that saying that your first kill is the hardest one to forget, but that saying didn't go for Popeye. After killing this bus driver, which I bet was one of the easiest things he ever did, Popeye immediately discovered that killing was something he had a passion for. He could stare his victim in the eye, whether it be a man, woman, or child, and pull that trigger without feeling any ounce of regret in his heart or losing sleep at night. This was a skill very few of Pablo Escobar's men possessed. So he decided to keep Popeye closer than other hitmen in running his cartel, a decision that molded Popeye into not just a serial killer, but a devil in human form. Popeye confessed to his involvement in over 3,000 killings, with another 257 killings that he did personally. This guy probably killed people before that morning shower, before breakfast, and even before going to bed. It was a routine job for him, and Popeye enjoyed it more than anything else. He didn't need drugs or alcohol to kill, and if you're asking yourself who the heck this guy was killing, well, that list may never have an end to it. But some of the most notable people he killed were Carlos Mato Hoyos, a Colombian politician who was in direct competition with Escobar. Another politician that died at the hands of Popeye was a Colombian presidential candidate, Luis Carlos Galán Sarmiento, who planned to sign an extradition treaty with the US if elected as the president of Colombia. And if you remember the 1989 AVIANCA plane bombing, one of the most heartless bombings Pablo Escobar ever ordered, Popeye was one of the masterminds behind it. Which makes perfect sense, cause who else in the cartel would have had the stomach to fit explosives into a briefcase, hand it to a total stranger, and order him to open it in midair, killing around 110 passengers in the process? Well, definitely a man like Popeye. There's a popular saying that love conquers all, but not even in my wildest dreams would I have expected a man like Popeye to succumb to the power of love. During his days with the Medellin cartel, Popeye happened to fall in love with a former mistress of Pablo's, Wendy Chavariaga Gil. Escobar left Wendy after she broke the #1 rule he had for all his mistresses, and that was to never get pregnant. After Escobar forcefully made Wendy get an abortion, he ended their relationship. But that's when Popeye came into the love triangle. Popeye met Wendy at a bar after a day's work of doing what he knows how to do best: kill people. And just like every romantic movie, they both made eye contact, smiled at each other, and the next morning, Popeye was waking up in Wendy's apartment. But to show how much loyalty he had for Escobar, he immediately went to Escobar and shared his escapade with Wendy. Pablo was surprisingly okay with it. However, he told Popeye that Wendy wasn't his type. She was the kind of girl that went for the big-time drug lords and traffickers who could spoil her with the finest luxuries in the world. But as they say, love is blind. Popeye was too blind to see the truth. And for the first time in his life, Popeye shared an emotional connection with a woman. But Pablo was always one step further. He had the hint that Wendy wanted to use Popeye to enact revenge on him for forcing her to abort her 5-month-old baby. So he tapped her phone, and to his greatest surprise, Wendy was an informant for the Search Block, a special group of trained Colombian police whose sole aim was to bring Pablo Escobar down. Pablo knew everything was happening because of him. Popeye falling in love, Wendy getting pregnant, and Popeye getting used as a pawn to get to him. It was a wrong he had to right himself. So he picked up his phone, called Popeye, who was in bed with Wendy, and asked the question, plata o plomo, a famous question amongst the cartel which translates to choosing money or death. Popeye chose money, and was ordered by Pablo to immediately kill Wendy while she was still in bed. But Popeye was crazy in love with her. He couldn't get himself to do it. So instead of killing her right there and then, he arranged to meet her in a cafe during the day, where he sent 2 of his hitmen to carry out the job. After the death of Wendy, Popeye kinda grew tired of carrying out killings for the cartel. It was also around this time that Pablo Escobar surrendered to the Colombian government and built his luxurious prison, La Catedral, which was basically more like a 7-star hotel. Popeye was there with Pablo during all the exciting moments within La Catedral, and he was also there when Pablo messed everything up by killing 2 men inside the prison facility, forcing his prison break from his own prison. Immediately, things around the cartel started crumbling. Pablo granted Popeye permission to leave the cartel, and immediately after Popeye officially left, he handed himself to the police the next day and confessed to all the many atrocities he had committed, at least the ones he could remember. After numerous court hearings, Popeye was sentenced to 30 years in prison on charges of terrorism, drug trafficking, extortion, conspiracy for terrorist purposes, and murder. But let's be honest, 30 years for a guy like Popeye seemed kinda small. A lot of people say he deserved a life sentence, but the real issue wasn't the sentence he was given. It was what he did after he completed his sentence that completely blew everyone's mind. On August 26, 2014, after 23 years and 3 months in prison, Popeye became a free man at the age of 52. For a guy that was involved in a significant fraction of the killings for the Medellin cartel, you'd expect him to kinda be low-key, right? Well, the truth is, he wasn't. In fact, he became a freaking YouTube star. Like, what was his thought process? What was he even thinking? And while we might never get answers to these questions, Popeye actually became very famous. He had millions of YouTube subscribers and followers on Facebook. He granted interviews to any and everybody that wanted one, giving very detailed descriptions of all the crimes committed by the Medellin cartel. Now, these acts from Popeye would have obviously angered a few who actually lost their loved ones to these operations, but hey, Popeye was just kicking around and getting famous. He even released a book titled Surviving Escobar and worked on several movie projects to tell the story of his life as the #1 hitman for Pablo. While most people received Popeye back into society after his many apologies, Popeye started becoming reckless. His old self kicked in with the attention he was getting, and this earned him a one-way ticket back to prison. In 2018, Popeye was sent back to prison for extortion of Pablo Escobar's former aides. But while in prison, Popeye was diagnosed with esophageal cancer, a cancer on the tube that links the throat to the stomach. In 2019, he was taken out of the maximum security prison facility, but it was too late because cancer had spread to other organs in his body. In the end, Popeye died on February 6, 2020 at the age of 57. Popeye rode his roller coaster of crime and fame. While many people had mixed feelings about his final days, I'd like to ask, what do you really think of Popeye? Do you think he really got his karma for all his killings? Or was his death an easy exit for someone who committed so many crimes in his life? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section down below. But once you're down there, why don't you scroll back up and check out the video shown on your screen. It's just as awesome as this one. So click on it, and I'll see you there.